I've read this book more than 5 times, and as a function of habit, I always mark the lines and paragraphs I find important to remember. And as I read it for the 3rd, 4th, and 5th time, I realized that if someone had only read the parts I marked, he or she would have saved so much time and understood everything perfectly. So I've gathered the best 101 pieces of advices that can tremendously help you with your professional and day-to-day life. So please listen carefully, grab a note, or save this video and watch it again. Try to get the most out of it. Just a quick disclaimer, some of these advices are completely immoral and I do not approve of them in any shape or form, but they can be used against you, so you better not be the victim. In your desire to please and impress masters, do not go too far in displaying your talents, or you might accomplish the opposite, inspire fear and insecurity. Those who attain high standing in life are like kings and queens. They want to feel secure in their positions and superior to those around them in intelligence, wit, and charm. It is a deadly but common misperception to believe that by displaying and wanting your gifts and talents, you are winning the master's affection. He may feign appreciation, but at his first opportunity, he will replace you with someone less intelligent, less attractive, and less threatening. Many believe that by being honest and open, they are winning people's hearts and showing their good nature. They are greatly deluded. Your honesty is likely to offend people. It is much more prudent to tailor your words, telling people what they want to hear rather than the ugly truth of what you feel or think. The paranoid and wary are often the easiest to deceive. The best deceivers utilize a bland and inconspicuous front that calls no attention to themselves. They know that extravagant words and gestures immediately raise suspicion. Instead, they envelop their marks in the familiar, the banal, the harmless. By being unabashedly open and honest, you make yourself so predictable that it's almost impossible to respect or fear you. And power will not accrue to a person who cannot inspire such emotions. Power is in many ways a game of appearances, and when you say less than necessary, you inevitably appear greater and more powerful than you are. Your silence will make people uncomfortable. Humans are machines of interpretation and explanations. They have to know what you're thinking. When you carefully control what you reveal, they cannot pierce your intentions or your meaning. Once the words are out, you cannot take them back. Keep them under control. Be particularly careful with sarcasm. The momentary satisfaction you gain with your biting words will be outweighed by the price you pay. Power of reputation. It can put a vast army on the defensive, even force them into retreat without a single arrow being fired. A solid reputation increases your presence and exaggerates your strength. It can also create an aura around you that will instill respect, even fear. Doubt is a powerful weapon. Once you lay it out at the back with insidious rumors, your opponents are in horrible dilemma. On the one hand, they can deny their rumors, but the layer of suspicion will remain. Maybe the rumors has some truth to it. If on the other hand, they take the high road and ignore you, the doubts are refuted will be even stronger. If done correctly, the sowing of rumors can so infuriate and unsettle your rivals that in defending themselves, they will make numerous mistakes. This is the perfect weapon for those who have no reputation of their own to work from. Society craves larger-than-life figures, people who stand above the general mediocrity. Never be afraid then of the qualities that set you apart and draw attention to you. Court controversy, even a scandal. It is better to be attacked, even slandered, than ignored. All professionals must have a bit of a showman about them. People feel superior to the person whose action they can predict. If you show them who's in control by playing against their expectation, you both gain their respect and lighten your hold on their fleeting attention. Make your gestures so large, amusing, and scandalous that the light stays on you while others are left in the shadows. The credit for an invention is as important, if not more important, than the invention itself. You must secure the credit for yourself and keep others from stealing it away or from piggybacking on your hard work. To accomplish this, you must always be vigilant and ruthless, keeping your creation quiet until you can be sure that there are no vultures circling over your head. Learn to take advantage of other people's work to further your own cause. Time is precious and life is short. If you try to do it all on your own, you run yourself ragged, waste energy, and burn yourself out. As Bismarck once said, fools say that they learn by experience. I prefer to profit from others' experience. Never mistake aggressive action for effective action, and most often, the most effective action is to stay back, keep calm, and let others be frustrated by the traps you lay for them, playing for the long-term power rather than quick victory. Manipulation is a dangerous game. When someone suspects he's being manipulated, it becomes harder and harder to control him. But when you make your opponent come to you, you create the illusion that he's controlling the situation. The essence of power is the ability to keep the initiative, to get others to react to your moves, to keep your opponent and those around you on the defensive. You yourself must learn to master your emotions and never to be influenced by anger. Meanwhile, however, you must play on people's natural tendency to react angrily when pushed and bait. In the long run, the ability to make others come to you is the weapon far more powerful than any tool of aggression. Any momentary triumph you think you gain through argument is really a Pyrrhic victory. The resentment and ill will you stir up is stronger and lasts longer than any momentary change of opinion. The power of demonstrating your idea is that your opponent do not get offensive and are therefore more open to persuasion. Making them literally and physically feel your meaning is infinitely more powerful than argument. There are no offensive words, no possibility of misinterpretation. If it doesn't matter in the long run whether the other person agrees with you or if the time of their own experience will make them understand what you mean, then it's best to not even bother with the demonstration. Save your energy and walk away. Emotional states are as infectious as diseases. You can die from someone else's misery. The risk of associating with infectors is that you will waste valuable time and energy trying to free yourself. Through a kind of guilt by association, you will also suffer in the eyes of others. Never underestimate the dangers of infection. The ultimate power is the power to get people to do as you wish. When you can do this without having to force people or hurt them, when they willingly grant you what you desire, then your power is untouchable. The best way to achieve this position is to create a relationship of dependence. Do not be one of the many who mistakenly believe that the ultimate form of power is independence. Power involves a relationship between people. The best you can hope for is that others will grow so dependent on you that you enjoy a kind of reverse independence. Their need for you frees you. With a well-timed gesture of honesty or generosity, you will have the most brutal and cynical beast in the kingdom eating out of your hand. The essence of deception is distraction. An act of kindness, generosity, or honesty is often the most powerful form of distraction because it disarms other people's suspicion. It turns them into children, eagerly lapping up any kind of affectionate gestures. Self-interest is the lever that will move people. Once you make them see how you can in some way meet their needs or advance their cause, the resistance to your request will magically fall away. You must distinguish the differences among powerful people and figure out what makes them tick. When they ooze greed, do not appeal to their charity. When they want to look charitable and noble, do not appeal to their greed. Wit and grace marked his conversation. He possessed the art of concealing his thoughts or his malice beneath a transparent veil of insinuations, words that implied something more than they express. Only when necessary did he inject his own personality. Make others talk endlessly about themselves and inadvertently reveal their intentions and plans. During social gatherings and innocuous encounters, pay attention. This is when people's guards are down. By suppressing your own personality, you can make them reveal things. The brilliance of this maneuver is that they will mistake your interest in them for friendship, so that you not only learn, you make allies. If people begin to suspect that you're worming secrets out of them under the cover of conversation, they will strictly avoid you. Emphasize friendly chatter, not valuable information. By pretending to bare your heart to another person, you make them more likely to reveal their own secrets. Give them a false confession, and they will give you a real one. As Winston Churchill said, truth is so precious that she should always be attended by a bodyguard of lies. You must surround yourself with such a bodyguard so that your truth cannot be penetrated. By planting the information of your choice, you control the game. This is the fate that faces all of us when we sympathize with our enemies. When pity or the hope of reconciliation makes us pull back from doing it away with them. Power cannot be dealt with this way. It must be exterminated, crushed, and denied the chance to return to haunt us. The more you are seen and heard from, the more common you appear. If you're already established in a group, temporary withdrawal would make you more talked about, even more admired. Create value through scarcity. Love never dies of starvation, she wrote, but often of indigestion. Your predictability gives them a sense of control. Turn the tables. Be deliberately unpredictable. Behavior that seems to have no consistency or purpose will keep them off balance, and they will wear themselves out trying to explain your moves. Unpredictability is not only a weapon of terror. Scrambling your patterns on a day-to-day basis will cause a stir around you and stimulates interest. People will talk about you, describe motives and explanations that have nothing to do with the truth, but keeps you consistently on their minds. If you want to turn people down, it is best to do so politely and respectfully, even if you feel their request is impudent or their offer ridiculous. Never reject them with an insult. You may be dealing with a Genghis Khan. You can never be sure who you're dealing with. A man who is of little importance today can be a person of power tomorrow. We forget a lot in our lives, but we rarely forget an insult. There is nothing to be gained by insulting a person unnecessarily. Swallow the impulse to offend, even if the other person seems weak. The satisfaction is meager compared to the danger that someday he or she will be in a position to hurt you. If you allow people to feel they possess you to any degree, you lose all the power over them. By not committing your affection, they will only try harder to win you over. Desire is like a virus. If we see that someone is desired by other people, we tend to find that person desirable too. The moment you commit, the magic is gone. The goal is not to put people off or to make it seem that you're incapable of commitment. You need to steer the pot, excite interest, and lure people with the possibility of having you. You have to bend to their attention occasionally, but never too far. Once you step into a fight that is not of your own choosing, you lose all initiative. The combatant's interest becomes your interest. You become their tool. Learn to control yourself, to restrain your natural tendency to take sides and join the fight. Given how important the idea of intelligence is to most people's vanity, it is critical never inadvertently to insult or impugn a person's brain power. Subliminally reassure people that they are more intelligent than you are. The feeling of intellectual superiority you give them will disarm their suspicious muscle. Always make people believe that they're smarter and more sophisticated than you are. They will keep you around because you make them feel better about themselves, and the longer you're around, the more opportunities you have to deceive them. Conserve your forces and energies by keeping them concentrated at their strongest point. You gain more by finding a rich mine and mining it deeper than by flirting from one shallow mine to another. Intensity defeats extensity every time. If you are not in danger, says Sun Tzu, do not fight. It is almost a physical law. What is bloated beyond its proportion inevitably collapses. Napoleon knew the value of concentrating your forces at the enemy's weakest spot. It was the secret of his success on the battlefield. Single-mindedness of purpose, total concentration on the goal, and the use of these qualities against the people less focused, people in a state of distraction. Such an arrow will find its mark every time and overwhelm the enemy. Be careful in trumping your own achievements, and always talk less about yourself than about other people. The more you talk about your deeds, the more suspicion you cause. You also stir up enough envy among your peers to induce treachery and backstabbing. Practice nonchalance. Never seem to be working too hard. Your talents must appear to flow naturally, with an ease that makes people take you for a genius rather than a workaholic. Even when something demands a lot of sweat, make it look effortless. People prefer to not see your blood and toil, which is another form of ostentation. It is better for them to marvel at how gracefully you achieved your accomplishments than to wonder why it took you so much work. Never affect friendliness and intimacy with your master. He doesn't want a friend for a subordinate. He wants a subordinate. Never approach him on an easy, friendly way, or act as if you're on the best terms. That is his prerogative. If he chooses to deal with you on this level, assume a very chumminess. Never criticize those above you directly. This may seem obvious, but there are often times when some sort of criticism is necessary. To say nothing or to give no advice would open you to risk of another sort. You must learn, however, to catch your advice and criticism as indirectly and as politely as possible. Think twice or 3 times before deciding you've made them sufficiently circuitous. Be frugal in asking those above you for favors. Nothing irritates a master more than having to reject someone's request. It stirs up guilt and resentment. Ask for favors as rarely as possible and know when to stop. Rather than making yourself the supplicant, it is always better to earn your favors so that the ruler bestows them willingly. Never joke about appearances or taste. A lively wit and a harmonious disposition are essential qualities for a good courtier, and there are times when vulgarity is appropriate and engaging, but avoid any kind of joke about appearances or taste. 2 highly sensitive areas, especially with those above you. Do not even try it when you are away from them. You will dig your own grave. The world wants to assign you a role in life, and once you accept that role, you are doomed. Your power is limited to the tiny amount allotted to the role that you've selected or have been forced to assume. Forge a new identity, one of your own making, one that has had no boundaries assigned to it by an envious and resentful world. This act of defiance is Promethean. It makes you responsible for your own creation. Our good name and reputation depend more on what we conceal than what we reveal. Occasional mistakes are inevitable. The world is just too unpredictable. People of power, however, are undone not by the mistakes they made, but by the way they will deal with them. Like surgeons, they must cut away the tumor with speed and finality. By apologizing, you open up all sorts of doubts about your competence, your intentions, and any other mistakes you may not have confessed. Excuses satisfy no one, and apologies makes everyone uncomfortable. The mistake does not vanish with an apology, it deepens and festers. Better to cut it off instantly, distract the tension from yourself before the people have time to ponder your responsibility or your possible incompetence. Lions circle the hesitant prey. People have a sixth sense for weaknesses of others. If in a first encounter, you demonstrate your willingness to compromise, back down down and retreat, you bring out the lion even in people who are not necessarily bloodthirsty. Everything depends on perception. Once you are seen as the kind of person who quickly goes on the defensive or who is willing to negotiate and be amenable, you will be pushed around without mercy. Boldness strikes fear. Fear creates authority. The bold move makes you seem larger and more powerful than you are. If it comes suddenly, with the stealth and swiftness of a snake, it inspires that much more fear. By intimidating with a bold move, you establish a precedent. In every subsequent encounter, people will be on the defensive, in terror of your next strike. As a person of power, you must research and practice endlessly before appearing in public, on stage or anywhere else. Never expose the sweat and labor behind your poise. Some think such exposure will demonstrate their diligence and honesty, but it actually just makes them look weaker, as if anyone who practiced and worked at it could do what they had done. Your public actions are like artworks. They must have visual appeal, must create anticipation, even entertain. When you reveal the inner working of your creation, you become just one more mortal among others. What is understandable is not awe-inspiring. We tell ourselves we could do as well if we had the money and the time. Avoid the temptation of showing how clever you are. It is far more clever to conceal the mechanism of your cleverness. Too much freedom creates a kind of anxiety. The phrase unlimited options sounds infinitely promising, but unlimited options would actually paralyze us and cloud our ability to choose. Our limited range of choice comforts us. This supplies the clever and cunning with enormous opportunities for deception. For people who are choosing between alternatives, find it hard to believe that they're being manipulated or deceived. They cannot see that you are allowing them a small amount of free will in exchange for a much more powerful imposition of your own will. Setting up a narrow range of choices, then, should always be a part of your deception. To gain power, you must be a source of pleasure for those around you, and pleasure comes from playing to people's fantasy. Never promise a gradual improvement through hard work. Rather, promise the moon, the great and sudden transformation, the pot of gold. Always look for passions and obsessions that cannot be controlled. The stronger the passion, the more vulnerable the person. Look at the part of a person that is most visible. Their greed, their lust, their intense fear. These are the emotions that they cannot conceal and over which they have the least control. And what people cannot control, you can control for them. People need validation and recognition. They need to feel important. All you have to do is find ways to make people feel better about their taste, their social standing, and their intelligence. They may never suspect that you're turning them like a thumbscrew, and if they do, they may not care, because you're making them feel better about themselves, and that is worth any price. It is within your power to set your own price. How you carry yourself reflects what you think of yourself. If you ask for little, shuffle your feet and lower your head, people will assume this reflects your character. But this behavior is not you. It is only how you have chosen to present yourself to other people. You can just as easily present the Columbus front, buoyancy, confidence, and the feeling that you were born to wear a crown. Be overcome by your self-belief, even while you know you are practicing a kind of deception on yourself. Act like a king, you are likely to be treated as one. The crown may separate you from other people, but it is up to you to make that separation real. You have to act differently, demonstrating your distance from those around you. One way to emphasize your difference is to always act with dignity, no matter the circumstances. Dignity, in fact, is invariably the mask to assume under difficult circumstances. It is as if nothing can affect you, and you have all the time in the world to respond. This is an extremely powerful pose. Never make the mistake of thinking that you elevate yourself by humiliating other people. You are radiating confidence, not arrogance or disdain. When you force the pace out of fear and impatience, you create a nest of problems that require fixing, and you end up taking much longer than if you had taken your time. Heroes may occasionally get there quicker, but papers fly everywhere, new dangers arise, and they find themselves in constant crisis mode, fixing the problems that they themselves have created. Waiting involves controlling not only your own emotions, but those of your colleagues, who mistaking action for power may try to push you into making rash moves. In your rivals, on the other hand, you can encourage this same mistake. If you let them rush headlong into trouble while you stand back and wait, you will soon find ripe moments to intervene and pick up the pieces. You choose to let things bother you. You can just as easily choose not to notice the irritating offender, to consider the matter trivial and unworthy of your interest. What you do not react to cannot drag you down in a feudal engagement. Your pride is not involved. The best lesson you can teach an irritating gnat is to consign it to oblivion by ignoring it. Uncontrollable desires make you seem weak, unworthy, and pathetic. You need to turn your back on what you want, showing your contempt and disdain. This is the kind of powerful response that will drive your targets crazy. They will respond with a desire of their own, which is simply to have an effect on you, perhaps to possess you, perhaps to hurt you. If they want to hurt you, you have unsettled them and made them play by your rules. Wars put you on the defensive. If you have to explain yourself, your power is already in question. The image, on the other hand, imposes itself as given. It discourages questions, creates forceful associations, resists unintended interpretations, communicates instantly, and forges bonds that transcend social differences. Words stir up arguments and division. Images bring people together. They are the quintessential instrument of power. From an early age, we learn to conceal our thoughts, telling the prickly and insecure what we know they want to hear. For most of us, this is natural. There are ideas and values that most people accept, and it is pointless to argue. There are people, however, who see such restraints as an intolerable infringement on their freedom, and who have a need to prove their superiority of their values and beliefs. In the end, though, their arguments convince only a few and offend a great deal more. This is the problem with the angry response. At first, it may strike fear and terror, but only in some. And as the day passes and the storm clears, other responses emerge. Embarrassment and uneasiness about the shouter's capacity for going out of control, and the resentment of what has been said. Losing your temper, you always make unfair and exaggerated accusations. A few such tirades and people are counting days until you are gone. When the waters are still, your opponents have the time and space to plot actions that they will initiate and control. So stir the waters, force the fish to the surface, get them to act before they are ready. Steal the initiative. The best way to do this is to play on uncontrollable emotions: pride, vanity, love, hate. Once the water is stirred up, the little fish cannot help but rise to the bait. The angrier they become, the less control they have, and finally, they are caught in the whirlpool you've made, and they drown. Power requires self-discipline. The prospect of wealth, particularly easy sudden wealth, plays havoc with the emotions. The suddenly rich believe that more is always possible. The free lunch, the money falling into his laps, is just around the corner. In this delusion, the greedy neglects everything power really depends on: self-control, the goodwill of others, and so on. Sudden wealth rarely lasts, for it is built on nothing solid. The powerful must have grandeur of spirit. They can never reveal any pettiness, and money is the most visible arena in which to display either grandeur or pettiness. Best spend freely then, and create a reputation for generosity, which in the end will pay great dividends. Never let financial details blind you to the bigger picture of how people perceive you. Their resentment will cost you in the long run. And if you want to meddle in the work of creative people under your hire, at least pay them well. Your money will buy their submission better than your display of power. Be aware of stepping into a great man's shoes. You will have to accomplish twice as much to surpass him. Those who follow are taken for imitators. No matter how much they sweat, they will never shed that burden. It is an uncommon skill to find a new path for excellence, a modern route to celebrity. The newest ones can be arduous, but they are often shortcuts to greatness. Within any group, trouble can most often be traced to a single source: the unhappy, chronically dissatisfied one who will always stir up dissension and infect the group with his or her ill ease. Before you know what hit you, the dissatisfaction spreads. Act before it becomes impossible to disentangle one strand of misery from another, or to see how the whole thing started. First, recognize troublemakers by their overbearing presence or by their complaining nature. Once you spot them, do not try to reform them or appease them. That will only make things worse. Do not attack them, whether directly or indirectly, for they are poisonous in nature and will work underground to destroy you. Do as the Athenians did: banish them before it's too late. Separate them from the group before they become the eye of a whirlpool. Let one person suffer so that the rest can live in peace. When trying to seduce people, it is often wise to isolate them from their usual social context. Once isolated, they are vulnerable to you, and your presence becomes magnified. Similarly, con artists often look for ways to isolate their marks from their usual social milieu, steering them into a new environment in which they are no longer comfortable. Here, they feel weak and succumb to deception more easily. In all your encounters, take a step back. Take the time to calculate and attune yourself to your target's emotional makeup and psychological weaknesses. Force will only strengthen their resistance. With most people, the heart is the key. They are like children, ruled by emotions. To soften them up, alternate harshness with mercy. Play on their basic fears and also their loves: freedom, family, etc. Once you break them down, you will have a lifelong friend and a fiercely loyal ally. When they meet someone new, rather than stepping back and probing to see what makes this person unique, they talk about themselves, eager to impose their own willpower and prejudice. They argue, boast, and make a show of their power. They may not know it, but they're secretly creating an enemy, a resistor, because there is no more infuriating feeling than having our own individuality ignored, your own psychology unacknowledged. It makes you feel lifeless and resentful. Play on contrast like this. Push people into despair, then give them relief. If they expect pain and you give them pleasure, you win their hearts. Creating pleasure of any kind, in fact, will usually bring you success, as will allaying fears and providing or promising security. Normally, people bombard us with their experiences and their tastes. They hardly ever make the effort to see things through our eyes. This is annoying, but it also creates a great opportunity. If you can show you understand another person by reflecting their inmost feelings, they will be entranced and disarmed. All the more so because it happens so rarely. No one can resist this feeling of being harmoniously reflected in the outside world, even though you might well be manufacturing it for their benefit and for deceptive purposes of your own. The past is powerful. What has happened before seems greater. Habit and history give any act weight. Use this to your advantage. When you destroy the familiar, you create a void or vacuum. People fear the chaos that will flood to fill it. You must avoid stirring up such fears at all costs. Borrow the weight and legitimacy from the past, however remote, to create a comforting and familiar presence. This will give your actions romantic associations, add to your presence, and cloak the nature of your changes you are attempting. Never flaunt your wealth, and carefully conceal the degree to which it has brought you influence. Never be so foolish as to believe that you are stirring up admiration by flaunting the qualities that raise you above others. By making others aware of their inferior positions, you are only stirring up unhappy admiration or envy, which will gnaw away at them until they undermine you in ways you cannot foresee. There is nothing more intoxicating than victory, and nothing more dangerous. In the realm of power, you must be guided by reason. When you attain success, step back. Be cautious. When you gain victory, understand the part played by the particular circumstances of a situation, and never simply repeat the same action again and again. History is littered with the ruins of victorious empires and the corpses of leaders who could not learn to stop and consolidate their gains. Luck and circumstance always plays a role in power. This is inevitable and actually make the game more interesting. But despite what you may think, good luck is more dangerous than bad luck. Bad luck teaches us valuable lesson about patience, timing, and the need to be prepared for the worst. Good luck deludes you into the opposite lesson, making you think your brilliance will carry you through. Your fortune will inevitably turn, and when it does, you will be completely unprepared. The powerful are constantly creating forms, and their power comes from the rapidity with which they can change. Their formlessness is in the eye of the enemy, who cannot see what they are up to and so has nothing solid to attack. This is the premier pose of power, ungraspable, as elusive, as swift as the god of Mercury, who could take any form he pleased and used his ability to wreak havoc on Mount Olympus. Train yourself to take nothing personally. Never show any defensiveness. When you act defensive, you show your emotions, revealing a clear form. Your opponents will realize that they have hit a nerve, an Achilles heel, and they will hit it again and again. So train yourself to take nothing personally. Be like a slippery ball that cannot be held. Let no one know what gets to you or where your weaknesses lie. Make your face a formless mask, and you will infuriate and disorient your scheming colleagues and opponents. Thank you guys for staying to the end. As I said before, try to get the most out of it, and comment your ideas. Without exchanging ideas, we won't grow as a society. See you in the next video. For now, goodbye.